If you grew up as a Jehovah's Witness in the past 4 decades, you're probably familiar with these books. Young People Ask, Answers That Work, the 101 Guide to Being a Good JW Teen. The first book was released in 1989, based on articles released in the Awake magazine starting in 1982. Volume 2 was released in 2008. But then Watchtower realized that the first volume was really out of date, so they remade it and released it as Volume 1. Yeah, the launch lineup makes no sense. Well, boys and girls, get ready cause today we're going through memory lane to revisit some of the craziest chapters found within these books. Yeah, it's about to get culty. You know, as always, we're doing the cringe challenge, so if you cringe, you lose, and when you cringe, let me know the exact moment you lost it. Are you ready? Let's get into it.
Young ones, you are loved by Jehovah and his organization.
First, let's talk briefly about the OG 1982 version. I actually found a copy of this in my parents' house, even though I couldn't find the other 2 volumes, which is funny, right? I probably tossed them out or something. This one is in Spanish and it has a basic blue cover. The book is divided into 10 sections, each one covering a different area of life, like dating, family life, and school. And let's be real, every teenager would jump ahead to section 6 for obvious reasons.
Sexy.
This book is hopelessly outdated. Just look at some of these illustrations. There's a chapter on modest dressing, and we see this JW mom scolding her daughter for trying to go out in this. Wow, super immodest. We also get a snapshot of what worldly kids are wearing back in the 80s. Yeah, it's a bit extravagant, but much cooler than all the nerds in suits and ties. There's a chapter on beating loneliness with this dude who looks like he's having testicular torsion. I don't know, man, maybe this religion just increases loneliness by limiting your friend group to believers. There's 2 chapters dedicated to masturbation. Very pressing issues right here. And you know this book is old because there's a chapter dedicated to avoiding immoral novels. Yes, like novels, physical books, back when people used to read. Yeah, if you grew up with these books, let me know how was your experience in the comments below. When I was a teenager, these were already outdated, so I never really read them through.
But how do you know that the governing body and the organization loves you?
Young People Ask Volume 2 was released in 2008, and this is the one I grew up with. The book feels much more like a journal, much more interactive. You're supposed to write down your answers on these boxes. And it's also quite colorful. The book starts with a preface painting an imaginary scenario in which a JW girl or boy might find themselves in. The Bible can help you to face challenges of youth with confidence. It contains the best advice to be found because it's the inspired word of God. 2 Timothy 3:16. How do we know the Bible is the inspired word of God? Because the Bible says so. Duh.
This is big brain time.
Okay, let's get right to work and start with chapter 1. The opposite sex. You see a boy and a girl holding hands as they stroll down the school corridor between classes. How do you feel? Completely envious. You're at the movies with friends when you realize that everyone is paired off, except you. How do you feel? Very jealous. Your best friend has recently begun showing interest in a member of the opposite sex and is now dating. How do you feel? Resentful. Well, at least that's how I would have answered if I was still a JW teen. The sexual repression was low-key turning me into an incel. Boy and girl, girl and boy. They're everywhere you look. In school, on the street, at the mall. Each time you see them, you feel a powerful urge to be part of that unit called a couple. Who the fuck is writing this stuff? An alien? A unit called a couple? Yep, this is totally human language, right?
Perhaps you are in your teens and you're starting to notice those of the opposite sex. Such emotions are natural and are part of growing up. But if you're not old enough to get married, what do you need to keep in mind?
Chapter 1 is titled, Am I Ready to Date? And the answer is no. No, boys and girls, if you are not at a marrying age, you are not ready to date. In fact, you are not allowed to date. Doing so will get you in trouble with your JW parents and the congregation. Why is dating as a teenager not allowed in this religion? Because there's a bigger chance you will fall into the temptation to have sex, and Jehovah doesn't like that. The thing is, Watchtower has a very wide definition of dating. I quote, "Whether on the phone or face to face, in the open or in secret, if you and your friend of the opposite sex have a special romantic understanding and communicate regularly, it's dating." You know, this might seem like a dumb take, but it creates so much anxiety on JW teens. Because if you like a girl and that girl likes you back, and you communicate regularly, that is considered dating. Hell, in the eyes of the Watchtower, you could be dating someone without ever actually going on a single date. So JW teens are cooked because they're not allowed to even be romantically interested in someone if they're not ready for marriage. Because if you like someone and that person likes you back and you talk, that's considered dating by the Watchtower, and Jehovah doesn't like that. The book says, "Granted, some of your peers might take a casual view of dating. Perhaps they simply enjoy being with a special friend of the opposite sex without any intention of marriage. Some might even view such a friend as little more than a trophy or an accessory to be seen with in public to boost their own self-esteem. Often though, such shallow relationships are short-lived. Many young ones who date break up with each other a week or two later," says a girl named Heather. "They come to view relationships as transitory, which in a sense prepares them for divorce rather than for marriage." What? Short relationships prepare people for divorce? What does that even mean? What a dumb take. Guess what? Most relationships and friendships are transitory, but that doesn't mean you viewed those people as trophies or accessories. Those friendships and relationships, even if short-lived, enrich our lives. The problem is that Watchtower sees dating as a means to an end instead of an experience to be lived and enjoyed. It's so utilitarian. Then we have an illustration of this boy tossing woman into the trash. If you date with no intention of marriage, you are acting like a child who plays with a new toy and then discards it. This language is very infantilizing. Oh, you want to have a girlfriend before marrying age? That must mean you are a selfish child who treats others as mere objects. It's just so manipulative.
How friendly were you? Were you like boyfriend and girlfriend?
So then what? How long are JW teens supposed to wait until they start dating? 18? 19? Nope, that's probably too young for Watchtower. Look at the statistic they toss here. Numerous studies indicate that a couple who marry under the age of 20 are likely to divorce within 5 years. What do you mean by likely? 50%? 70%? Who knows? They provide no source whatsoever. It's true, couples that marry young have a higher chance to get divorced. But that's terrible news for young Jehovah's Witnesses, because if they don't feel quite ready to get married, then they're not even allowed to form romantic relationships. And let's face it, most people in their early 20s are not really prepared to get married, especially in this economy. In the first Young People Ask book, Watchtower puts out this silly photo of kids in wedding attire, saying that a lot of young people are just as unfit for marriage as these kids. Which, come on, give me a break. Getting married in your early 20s is not the same as getting married as a child. This is just super infantilizing.
There's someone I'm interested in.
Interested in?
Someone I'd like to date.
You're only 17.
I'm turning 18 the next month.
That's not the point.
What is the point?
You know how your mom and I feel about you even thinking about dating so young.
Bruh.
Another reason Watchtower gives as to why you shouldn't date early is the bloom of youth. You probably heard that term a million times. It basically refers to the period of your life where your sexual impulses are at an all-time high. You know, your teenage years. Watchtower treats this period as a very dangerous time. So if you start dating during the bloom of youth, you are just playing with fire. It will lead you right into the wrong conduct.
They're on the express route to sexual immorality.
Another thing that JWs have to worry about is being spiritually mature. If you're not baptized, forget about dating. JW ladies are ashamed if they fall in love with unbaptized or unexemplary men, and JW men are constantly pressured to attain more congregation privileges before they even think about having a partner.
Who are we talking about?
Zach.
Zach Tanner?
Dad, if this is about him not being baptized.
Whoa, yes, this is
Yes, it
exactly
is.
about him not being baptized. And even if he was, you're both still too young.
We're not that young. We're graduating soon.
Liz, neither one of you is ready for marriage right now. Can you honestly see Zach as being your spiritual head?
Bah.
So JW teens are not allowed to date, they're not allowed to please themselves, and they have to wait until marriage to have any sort of physical intimacy. All of this sexual repression can break you down and make it easier to control you. It's also the perfect recipe for creating incels, that is, young men who are sexually frustrated, and since they're not allowed to date, they start believing that no one is gonna like them. It's a complete shit show. Unsurprisingly, some JW teens might not resist the temptation to date, so they will have to do so in secret. Since this religion is overly restrictive, most JW teenagers will end up living a double life, hiding some of their activities from their parents.
Before I knew it, we were texting all the time. Then, one thing led to another. Honestly, when things started to get physical, I thought I could control it, but it was only getting worse. I didn't want to let my parents down, so I started lying to them. And then I started lying to myself. I thought if I could just keep going to the meetings and do my parts, it could somehow be okay. But I was far from okay.
But Watchtower really does not like secret dating. I quote, "Dating without the intention of marriage is like advertising something you're not selling," says 20-year-old Evan. Dang, Watchtower treats dating as turning in a job application, and if your friend is dating someone in secret, you're expected to report them to a responsible adult. I quote, "Covering up for a friend who is secretly dating is like covering up for a diabetic who is secretly gorging on sweets." Yup, totally the same thing, right? The snitching culture in this religion is insane. You can't go get ice cream with the girl you like without the fear of one of your fellow brothers snitching you to the elders. Did you ever go on secret dates as a Jehovah's Witness? Let me know in the comments below. I know I didn't because I was a goody two-shoes back when I was in, but yeah, it's just unnecessary restrictions.
And as I read the words and started meditating on them, I realized something. By holding off dating a little longer, I wasn't missing out. Rather, I was preparing myself. I could use the time now to focus on something much more important. My relationship with Jehovah.
But once you're old enough to date officially, things don't get much better. You always have to have a chaperone with you. Even if you're a full-blown adult, you're still expected to take a chaperone with you. So there is no opportunity to be intimate with your partner. And hey, I get it. If you want to save sex for marriage, that's cool. But this religion doesn't even let you be alone with your girlfriend under any circumstance. No outings to the park, no movie nights, no dinner dates without having a chaperone present. Watchtower places zero trust in their young adults, just assuming they will cave into immorality if they're left alone for 2 seconds. The book says that not all forms of physical affection are sinful. They even quote the Song of Solomon in the chapter, which is funny because the Song of Solomon is erotic poetry, basically the Bible's version of soft porn. The book says, "A dating couple must exercise extreme caution. Kissing, embracing, or doing anything that causes arousal can lead to sexual misconduct. It's all too easy, even for a couple with honorable intentions, to get carried away and engage in sexual immorality." You know that being around the person you like usually causes a bit of arousal, right? It's completely normal. Watchtower loves to scare the young ones about the most normal human experiences. If you are not at least a tiny bit aroused, cuddling or kissing your partner, are you even attracted to them?
There's fondling, caressing, stroking,
sexy.
The book also tells you that sexual misconduct includes taking it as a snack or through the back door, if you know what I mean, and you're not allowed to talk about sex with your partner either, unless it's to remind them that sex is off the table. Basically, don't try looking for any loopholes. No sexting, no making out, and absolutely no soaking. Oh wait, wrong religion. If you want to learn more about dating and purity culture in the JW religion, I recommend you watch my Pillowgate rebuttal and my review of the film, What is True Love? I'll leave a link in the description below because the rabbit hole just goes deeper and deeper.
Jehovah and his organization love all you young ones who are striving to do what is right.
But what happens if you and your girlfriend went too far? Well, you have to confess to your parents and to the elders so they can get you back on track. But wait, what does going too far even mean? Hooking up? Well, not necessarily. I've heard of JW teens confessing to the elders because they made out with their partners or because they did a bit of fondling. When you're indoctrinated, even touching a boob fills you with so much guilt, you would think you just nailed Jesus to the cross. To the stake.
Jehovah, I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me?
None of us are professional actors.
The next chapter is titled, Why Stay a Virgin? I don't know, just ask Mark Sanderson, he's never been married. Look at this quote. Premarital sex is often an emotionally painful experience with devastating consequences. This book is full of overgeneralizations like this, and instead of supporting their claims with data and numbers, they just quote JW teenagers who engaged in premarital sex and felt guilty afterwards. Like, of course they were gonna feel guilty. The fear of premarital sex has been hammered onto them since birth. They quote this girl, Maria, who after having sex with her boyfriend said, "Afterwards, I felt embarrassed and ashamed. I hated myself and I hated my boyfriend." Hey Maria, it sucks that your first sexual experience was completely ruined by this religion, but not everyone's experience is gonna be the same. Everyone is different, and look, there's nothing wrong with staying a virgin until marriage, let me make that clear. And there are risks involved in premarital sex that you have to keep in mind. But this watchtower rhetoric can be harmful because if a young one loses their virginity before marriage, which happens more often than you think, then they're gonna be crushed with guilt. And since they've never had a proper sex education, they're more likely to practice unsafe sex and even end up with an unwanted pregnancy. And at the end, they throw in this fun fact. Did you know? Sexually permissive people are unlikely to change their habits just because they get married. In contrast, those who are loyal to God's moral standards before marriage are more likely to be loyal to their mate afterward. I don't know, Watchtower. I think you're just pulling these fun facts out of your ass. There are worldly people who were sexually open in the past but are now loyal to their spouses, and there are JWs who end up cheating on their spouses even though they remain celibate until marriage. Again, people are not a monolith. You can't just make up these blanket statements and apply them to the entire population.
Jehovah loves you, young ones.
The next section starts talking about puberty. Oh boy, we all remember those awkward times, right? Low-key terrifying at some points, especially when your parents force you to skip sex ed class at school. But do not be afraid. Watchtower wants the young ones to talk with their parents about sex. Which is funny because in the What is True Love film, Megan's parents lose their minds when she opens up about liking a boy, and she's already like 17. So I can't imagine a JW teen actually opening up about these topics with their parents. Then we get this banger of a line. As the reproductive system matures, both boys and girls become aware of the opposite sex as never before. When I hit puberty, I suddenly realized how many pretty girls there were, says Matt. That was really frustrating because I also realized that I couldn't do anything about it until I was much older. Yep, best life ever. Chapter 12 talks about gossip and why we should avoid partaking in it. which is funny because gossip culture is huge in this religion. I mean, what do you expect from the same people that encourage you to snitch on your friends in case they have a secret girlfriend? Gossip is the most entertaining thing you can do as a JW. The following section teaches us how to resist peer pressure. And why are all these evil worldly kids staring at me? I think they're about to pull out a cigarette.
¿Quieres? Why won't you smoke this cigarette? Are you afraid? Are you chicken?
Some of your peers may taunt you and say that you aren't thinking for yourself, but you are. In fact, Jehovah wants you to prove to yourself that it's best to do his will. So why let your peers make you their puppet? Yeah, boys and girls, why become a puppet to your peers when you can become a puppet to the Watchtower? Just replace the cigarette with a Bible and you got yourself the ideal Jehovah's Witness. The next chapter is a giant guilt trip, telling teenagers that they should confess to their parents in case they are living a double life. Keep in mind that to the Watchtower, living a double life can involve dating in secret, listening to debasing music, playing violent video games, watching rated R movies, attending rowdy parties, or using bad language. And remember, even if you successfully hide misconduct from your parents, you cannot hide your actions from the eyes of Jehovah God. Big Brother is watching. The next section speaks on how to deal with your parents and how to deal with your emotions. It's a combination of genuinely good advice along with some incredibly stupid takes. Like chapter 28, How Can I Avoid Homosexuality? Spoiler alert, you can't. Just switch the word homosexuality with heterosexuality and you see the stupidity of the premise. It's the same harmful rhetoric we've heard a million times before. It tells JWs to fight against their homosexual tendencies, treating those feelings as sinful and comparing them to fits of anger. It also tells us to avoid pornography and gay propaganda, as if flipping through underwear catalogs would just turn you gay. It's frustrating because the authors are aware of how unrealistic it is to fight against your own sexuality. They actually describe it as agonizingly difficult, but they just don't care. Gay JWs are just supposed to deny themselves and pretend to be straight, which sounds like absolute torture. And I can't imagine how much mental anguish this kind of advice has produced, not only among JWs, but in all Abrahamic religions.
Are you a homosexual?
Chapter 29 is not much better because we get introduced to the concept of thought crime. When you hit puberty, you start thinking about sex a lot, and that's normal, right? But Watchtower compares having sexual thoughts as being invaded by enemy soldiers. The book says, above all, don't overlook the help that is available from your Heavenly Father. When I feel sexual urges coming on, says one Christian, I really make myself pray. So you're expected to pray the sexual thoughts away as if they were a plague instead of, treating them as just thoughts. We all have intrusive thoughts every now and then, right? And we don't torture ourselves because these thoughts appear. We just think about something else. The concept of thought crime is so exhausting because you will find yourself praying every time you think about sex, which happens all of the time as a teenager. You end up feeling like a degenerate, even though you're just going through normal teenager stuff. Oh, and there's also more warnings against masturbation, which just adds to the religious guilt. If you have a problem with masturbation, you're encouraged to reach out to your parents or to the elders so they can help you out spiritually. And I never thought about it, but it's actually really inappropriate for an underage child or teenager to feel the need to confess to the elders that he has been masturbating. Like, that's low-key abusive, isn't it? Like, it's awkward enough talking to your parents about these things, and I still believe that it's none of their business. But talking to the elders about it is just gross. The concept of privacy doesn't exist in this religion.
A second way you need to keep on guard is resisting the unclean habit of masturbation.
The next section is on recreation, basically a rant against immoral entertainment. Playing with violent video games is compared to playing with radioactive waste, and listening to explicit music is the same as biting into a worm-infested apple. Yeah, totally the same thing. Some of you gamers in the audience are already a Chernobyl level threat. The final section is on how to grow your relationship with God by studying the Bible, preaching to others at school, and getting baptized. And we get this illustration. Bible standards don't restrict your happiness, they protect you. Yeah, sure man. Growing up as a Jehovah's Witness is completely freeing and not like being in a straitjacket.
I feel dead inside.
Now let's take a look at the final entry in the series. Young People Ask Volume 1, which is supposed to be a remake of the OG version. The topics remain mostly the same, with blazing questions like, how can I conquer the habit of masturbation? In this religion? By getting married. Why don't girls like me? Maybe because you have no personality outside of Jehovah? How can I break free from drugs? By worshiping God? How can I make my worship of God more enjoyable? By taking drugs? Volume 1 has a much larger section involving dating and sex. We get more homophobic vitriol, which I don't have the stomach to cover. I think we've heard it all at this point. But the chapter also addresses people who are bisexual, which I guess was a loophole that some JW teens were exploiting. Don't worry, boys and girls. The book describes same-sex attraction as a passing phase. I wonder how true that is. If I have any gay or bisexual members in my audience, let me know. Were those feelings just a passing phase, or is Watchtower full of baloney?
You're full of baloney, malarkey.
The next chapter is on premarital sex, again putting the concept of virginity up in a pedestal. I quote, engaging in premarital sex is like taking a beautiful painting and using it as a doormat. Look, like I mentioned, there's nothing wrong in being a virgin or in waiting until marriage, but this idea that losing your virginity before marriage is gonna make you damaged goods or a broken painting is incredibly toxic, and since there's such a double standard, it's especially harmful for the ladies. There's also chapters against hookup culture, binge drinking, smoking, hanging out with worldly people, and dressing immodestly. And this photo is so over the top. It seems that these parents have never seen a tank top. And in the final section, we get this gem of a chapter, where 16-year-old Josh is being forced by his mom to go to the meetings. If you are like Josh and don't enjoy going to the meetings, what can you do? Well, prepare for the meetings beforehand, of course. What if you don't enjoy going out in the ministry? What can you do? Well, go out with a different brother. That will for sure make you fall in love with Jehovah's service. And here we get the most sensible advice in the entire series. It's not wrong to examine your religious beliefs. In fact, asking questions and then doing research is a good way to find out whether what you believe about God is really the truth. Now this is advice I can get behind. If you are a young Josh and don't enjoy running the Jehovah hamster wheel, maybe try doing some research on the internet about the religion you're participating in. If you do, it's only a matter of time before you hang up the tie and start enjoying life as your authentic self.
Epic.
I give these books a 5 out of 5 in the cult meter. These manuals are interesting because they're a combination of genuinely useful advice mixed in with some toxic religious rhetoric. The teenager years are difficult times. They're difficult for worldly kids and especially difficult for Jehovah's Witness teenagers. And of course, teenagers need advice on growing up, on how to handle peer pressure, how to avoid drugs, how to have a balanced view of themselves. All of that is useful information. But when it comes to dating and sex, these books go completely off the rails. This book shames young people for wanting to date before they're ready for marriage, which is ridiculous, right? It just encourages people to get married way too early or to start dating in secret, which just damages your relationship with your parents and crushes you with guilt. This religion leaves teenagers very little room to express themselves. Unbelievers are constantly demonized, and teens are shamed for even wanting to be part of the world. You can give teenagers useful advice without treating them like children and without having them become social pariahs at school. Dumbass books. And after the re-release of Volume 1, Watchtower has kept releasing articles for young people on jw.org.
But you teenagers, Have you been keeping up with all of the information specifically for you on jw.org?
They also make whiteboard animations and My Teen Life, which is my favorite series on JW Broadcasting.
One day, a girl in class, she asked me to touch her inappropriately. Of course, I rejected her.
Of all of the things in the world that have never happened, that has never happened the most. That is the most didn't happen shit of all time.
They need to bring that series back, man. And what do other XJWs think about these wonderful manuals? Let me read some comments from Reddit. Joystick Baby says, "This is how I learned what masturbation was. Thanks, Jehovah." Yeah, that's so true. Little children can have access to these books and learn about all these sexual topics way before they're supposed to. It's very inappropriate thinking about it. Mandrake SCL says, ew, and ew. To make things worse, apart from being incredibly cringe, all those books, especially the OGs, were very US adolescence based. So for a third world country teen, it had an extra layer of weirdness. Yep, this is an American religion, American centered. 5 Coolest said, "I remember the email chains among witnesses with the photoshopped questions old people ask. Answers they forget." I remember seeing those memes, an actually funny JW meme, quite hilarious. Silent Consequence 168 said, "The OG version back in the day had a story of a boy that masturbated 7 times a day. 7 made me feel like a total amateur. That's actually too much gooning, man. Let thy meat rest, my brother."
I'm tired of this.
Some of these comments are diabolical, man. I'm just gonna leave it here. Fuck these books. Amen.
Good answer.
So guys, now I want to hear from you. Did you grow up with these young people ask books? What was your experience like? Let me know in the comments below. And if you would like me to cover other Watchtower books, drop them down in the comments as well. This episode was a blast to make. It took me so much time, but it brought back so many memories. If you appreciate my work, I invite you to join my Patreon or become a channel member. It's only $1 a month and you gain early access to all my work, guys. It's thanks to my Patreons and my YouTube channel members that I'm able to do this full time. So thank you guys so much. You are the best. I hope you enjoyed this episode and I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, guys. Have a wonderful day and stay away from cigarettes, violent video games, debased music, dating, pleasuring yourself, enjoying your life.
Bah. Goodbye, little sheep.